Hey, I'm here to talk about Tammy Spry's Chapter 3 paper and composing performative autoethnography. That's a fun word every single time I say it. So mostly what she's trying to do throughout this chapter is mostly just kind of tell you how to go about writing an autoethnography, because especially in today's modern college or just academic society in general, we're taught to really speak not using the personal pronouns, because a lot of it's very technical writing. It's like argument based. You don't want any I in there for bias and stuff. But this is actually totally opposite. They do want a lot of I, and they do ask you to put a lot of I in there. And the whole entire point of autoethnography that she redefines at the beginning is to to connect and divine and to find a meaning, a common ground to stand on, to make you think, to make you reflect. And one thing that she talks about is vulnerability and self-disclosure. She says you don't want to tell your story to the point where you're just absolutely exposing yourself to self-disclosure. Like, you don't want to sit there and over refrain or over open. And I think I have a quote on page 124. If I can find it. Oh, almost there. I think here it is. Autoethnographic scholarship is an opening into the complex negotiations of meaning making with others for the purpose of adding alternatives to the single story. So basically, just that was on page 124. So, like I said, just not to basically dilute the meaning with too much or too little. And another thing she proceeds to talk about is audience members. How you have to. It's about that meaning process, like I just said in the recent quote that I just read. It's also about agency representation, how you choose how much power and emphasis you put in certain parts of your story, and how the audience chooses to interpret that. And she actually goes through a couple of different methodologies on how to go about looking into autoethnography. And the first one she talks about is socio-cultural context, what it was like in the time of said experience, and how it affected you and the moment and that particular action in time and space. Critical self-reflection, how you choose to take it, how you've interpreted what you did in that moment, and how you choose to expound on that. Self-other interaction, how you interacted with others in that particular scenario, how you dealt with it emotionally, what you felt. Bodies, how'd you physically take it, emotionally, breaking it down. And as far as ethical goes, ethical had a lot of, it was kind of one long paragraph, it felt like. So I'm sorry if it kind of blurs together with another subject. That's totally my fault. But and by the way, I do have a small note card just to keep me on the right track here. So basically, she really emphasizes no blaming, because blame takes away from the self-critical. Like, don't sit there and say, "Oh, it's my fault. Oh, I did this. Oh, yeah. She basically sits there and says, "No, don't do that." She doesn't want you to sit there and over glorify yourself, creating the hero effect. And she also doesn't want you to sit there and underplay yourself as the victim effect. And she doesn't want you to get too wrapped up that it becomes endorsing yourself or making a spectacle out of you rather than the meaning of the story. She also doesn't want to sit there and the vice versa for the audience as well. And then she actually goes into the meat of the what I feel like she's trying to get at is how to best format it, how to best go about writing it. She says, first off, if you want to fragment it, just jot down all the stories that you have. Sit there, it doesn't matter what order they're in, just write them out, and then create a mind map for them. And then select certain groups that seem to have similarities between them. Expound on those, create more detailed descriptions of those. Then do some research, find out what it was like back then, what the time was, how it felt, what the social construct was back then, and then trying to find some way to add some metaphors or symbolism. And it doesn't really matter about time and space. She is a specific thing that she talks about. And that's more of just the tense that it's being talked in. It's gonna bounce all over the place. So that's natural. She talks about adding additional personas, which is perfectly fine because you're gonna have another person in that interaction, so that's perfectly normal. And then she talks about a very interesting part at the end about fragment to collage, and that's kind of true because at the end of the day, your stories kind of create this collage of you. May not be in true blue alphabetical, not alphabetical, chronological order, but it is about you. And as far as my questions go, I would like to know a little bit more detail about, specifically what she means by research, because that's still kind of vague to me. And I also want to know, you still want to know, the best way to sit there and map out, how the body feels, how much is too much, how much is too little. But other than that, that's all I have.